Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Niko, your fire chief. I'm joined with Chief Calvert, our police chief this evening, and we're both here to provide an overview of the recent wildfires that have devastated Los Angeles County. These events have significant implications for our own wildfire preparedness and response strategies in Laguna Beach. On January 6th, the Laguna Beach Fire Department was informed by the National Weather Service update that notified the red flag warning for the Orange County coastal region. And this activation sets into motion several activities with our city staff. We increase our staffing levels with the police department, the fire department, our marine safety, as well as public works, and additional dispatchers placed on duty. We have community-wide communications to notify of a high fire danger that's given through multiple channels with reminders of what actions to take in the event of an emergency. Heavy equipment is staged for the emergency use and other construction projects that will impede traffic or create a fire risk is stopped. Our community emergency response team, as well as our red flag patrol volunteers, deployed to keep an eye on the open space surrounding our city for any reports of smoke or fire. An additional action practice is assigning one of our fire engines to a countywide strike team of engines. They assemble and they can be immediately deployed in any direction upon request. On January 6th, the National Weather Service updated its forecast for the Los Angeles County, indicating a significant windstorm. They warned that the winds would accelerate to dangerous levels beginning on the afternoon of January 7th and lasting through the early January 8th. They described the event as potentially life-threatening and anticipated it to be the region's most destructive windstorm since 2011. At 2:15 p.m. on January 7th, the Palisades fire started. The automatic aid resources, our Orange County strike team with Laguna Beach Fire Engine 302 were immediately launched to the reported location on the Pacific Palisades. At 3:40 on January 7th, the Eaton fire started near Altadena and Pasadena. At 4:05 p.m. on that same day, the Hearst fire started just north of San Fernando. On January 7th, during our update and changing conditions for the better in Laguna Beach and the extreme disaster that firefighters were facing in Los Angeles, the decision was made to allow the Laguna Beach OES engine join the battle in the Pacific Palisades. Our firefighters at the Palisades confronted an unprecedented confluence of extreme weather and fire conditions. The ferocious Santa Ana winds, relentless heat, and critical low humidity created a firestorm that rapidly outpaced containment efforts. The intensity of the blaze forced firefighters to pivot from suppression to a singular focus, saving lives. The inferno spread with such speed and ferocity that many crews were forced to abandon traditional tactics and prioritize evacuation and rescue efforts over direct fire engagement. This crisis underscored a harsh reality for the professional fire service. The scope and scale of such incidents are outstripping traditional approaches. The Pacific Palisade fire exemplifies the need to shift the conversation. Instead of attempting to provide quick solutions to this growing problem, it's essential to step back, reassess, and fundamentally rewrite the problem statement. What is clear is that the system in place, while robust, are being tested beyond their design. Within 24 hours, the number of fire resources requested in a single county reached a historic peak, overwhelming even California's renowned master mutual aid system. The system, one of the largest and most practiced in the nation, struggled to meet the demands of simultaneous large-scale emergencies. Despite best efforts, highly trained personnel, the sheer volume of need exceeded capacity, forcing difficult decisions about resource allocation and response priorities. At the heart of the response, firefighters relied on their core priorities: life safety first, followed by property protection. This unwavering commitment provided a guiding principle in the chaos, but it also highlighted the immense challenges posed by changing climate and escalating fire risks. To move forward, the fire service must confront the reality that these types of incidents are not anomalies, but the new norm. This requires a collective effort to rethink strategies, policies, and resource allocation to prepare for a future of increasingly extreme events. As the fire chief, I'm appreciative of the support of both council and the community. In the past couple of years, our department has been able to accomplish our standards of cover study, completed our strategic plan, which I'll be happy to present in the coming weeks, and has taken the initial steps at enhancing staffing, both in our administration and with our suppression resources. We are all anxious and willing to take a closer look at our efforts to make sure we are all on the right path and to make sure that our work is impactful. Lastly, 6 of our dedicated firefighters operating 2 engines have been assigned to assist with the Palisade Fire, joining the valiant efforts of crews from across the western United States, Mexico, and Canada to combat this unprecedented incident. While these individuals represent our department on the front lines of this historic event, I want to take a moment to recognize the extraordinary commitment of the professional workforce I'm honored to lead. Here at home, our firefighters have stepped up in every way imaginable, willingly taking on extra shifts to ensure that Laguna Beach remains protected while their colleagues are deployed. This speaks to the spirit and dedication of our team, the professionals who are not only anxious and willing to answer the call when the need arises, but who also remain committed to our community and their public service. Their action is a testament to the resilience and professionalism, and it should give every member of the city confidence in the strength of our department. While we contribute to mutual aid efforts beyond our borders, we continue to provide the highest level of service to the residents in our own city. I'm going to hand it off to the police chief.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of City Council. Jeff Calvert, your police chief. I've been in law enforcement now for over 30 years, and the devastation that we're seeing in LA is unparalleled and heartbreaking. I started with Laguna Beach Police Department in 1996, and the emotional and financial impacts of the 1993 Laguna Beach fire were still very real and evident in our community, and the anxiety of that catastrophe is still felt today. LA has a long road ahead of them, and it makes me very proud to see our community come together to provide material and financial aid. During a wildfire event, the primary mission of the police department is the protection of life by facilitating mass evacuations of people in the impacted areas. In 2019, I had the opportunity with then Mayor Bob Whalen to visit the city of Paradise following the destruction caused by the Camp Fire. This was an opportunity for me to evaluate the management of the Paradise Camp Fire evacuation, and the challenges they faced were eye-opening and chilling. It was a surreal scene. They had a robust evacuation plan in place. How many personnel in each intersection, how many cones in each intersection. But they weren't able to execute it because the speed of the fire limited personnel, utility poles falling across roadways, power loss, and the evacuation of their dispatch center. Public Works literally had to use heavy equipment, like in LA, to move live power lines and vehicles from the roadways so people could escape and allow emergency responders to enter the city. You could actually see large holes in the asphalt where the cars burned into the pavement. The City Council created the Wildland Fire Mitigation and Fire Safety Subcommittee led by council members Bob Whalen and Sue Kemp. And to date, the city has invested more than $25 million to improve our mitigation efforts. One of the recommendations from the subcommittee was the contract with KLD Engineering to conduct an evacuation study. The study helped us understand how long it will take to evacuate our city, accounting for variables like time of day, road closures, access impaired neighborhoods, and contraflow. The study revealed that under normal roadway conditions, with no roadway hazards like stalled vehicles, trees or power lines blocking the road, it will take 4 hours and 20 minutes to evacuate our community. If Laguna Canyon Road and North Coast Highway are rendered unavailable, you can add 4 hours to that calculation. Just to put it into perspective, the devastation that occurred in Lahaina, Maui, City of Paradise, and the Pacific Palisades took place within 4 hours because of the high winds. Like Laguna, each of these communities have limited evacuation routes. Our current city evacuation plan breaks the city into 20 evacuation management zones. The maps of these zones are located on the city website along with the evacuation routes. Please go to the website. Know the name of your zone. Have a go bag. So when you receive an evacuation warning or order through our alert and warning systems like Nixle, wireless emergency alert, or social media, you will be prepared to leave. What's the difference between a warning and an order? Evacuation warning means there is a potential threat to life or property, and you need to start making preparations for an evacuation order. If there's an evacuation order, that means there's imminent threat of life and property. People in these areas need to gather their essential needs and start leaving. We utilized our evacuation plan during the 2018 Aliso fire and successfully evacuated and repopulated 2 of the zones which had approximately 1,500 residents. One of the lessons learned during this evacuation, like we witnessed in LA, is that several residents did not take essential needs like medication, medical devices, and pets with them. We had to redirect essential personnel to drive them back to their homes. In LA, they were quickly overwhelmed with these requests and just stopped assisting. We also used this plan in the 2021 Emerald Fire and the 2022 Coastal Fire. During the 2021 Emerald Fire, we issued an order to evacuate Emerald Bay, North Laguna, and Irvine Cove. Following the announcements, I did a windshield survey with Councilmember Sue Kemp and the city manager, and to our surprise, the roadways were eerily empty and residents were not leaving. If you are ordered to leave, be a good community partner and be the first one out, not the last. Time and time again, we see people wait until the last minute thinking they're going to save their home with a garden hose, and they become trapped. We understand the importance of your home, but it's not more valuable than your life, your family, or the life of the emergency responder who may have to save you. During an evacuation, we'll be relying heavily on outside agency assistance. We have outstanding relationships with our mutual aid police partners who will be assisting us with evacuations and traffic control. We also created mutual aid agreements with Newport and Irvine to utilize their emergency operations center if we have to evacuate City Hall, and we are currently creating an alternate EOC location at the Community and Recreation Center. I've said it before publicly, one of the single greatest threats facing our community is our above-ground utility poles. This is evidenced by the fire in Lahaina, Maui, the City of Paradise Camp Fire, and the Laguna Beach Emerald Fire. All of these cities have limited evacuation routes, and because the above-ground power poles either ignited, fell in the wind, or burned, it limited their ability to push out mass notifications, crippled escape routes, and hindered ingress for emergency responders. Almost 200 people perished in the Maui and Paradise fires combined, causing more than $20 billion in property damage and economic loss. Sadly, 24 people and counting have died in the LA fires, and the cost to restore those communities may break new historic records. I appreciate Councilmember Whalen's leadership back in 2018 to have Measure P placed on the ballot. This would have increased our sales tax by 1% to fund undergrounding. I did a little math, and based on the projections, the city would now have $36 million to underground our utilities, but the measure did not receive 2/3 of the votes needed for a special tax. It's not if, but when a fire will happen again, and preparation is critical to mitigating property loss and preventing deaths. We have been proactive as a city to invest in wildland fire mitigation measures, But the question we should be asking ourselves is how can we afford not to address the threat of our overhead lines? Unfortunately, it takes a catastrophe to make disaster preparedness a priority. Let's not be that community. In closing, I want to thank the men and women of our police department who have taken time away from their families to upstaff during red flag days and high winds, and the fire watch team and CERT who have helped patrol our wilderness areas. Thank you.
Well said, and thank you both. I have some comments that I'll save for after we hear from the public and general public comments, but are there any specific questions to either of the chiefs right now?
First of all, thank you both for excellent presentations. Chief King, I just had a question. Do we know how long our engines will be deployed, and will at some point they change out the crews?
The commitment is 14 days from the date of deployment, and we'll look towards rotating those crews if they're kept beyond that. We know that they're hanging on to all their resources right now because of the second wind event that they're going through, but we should start to see, hopefully, the release of some of the resources in the coming days.
Sue?
Yeah, do we have, I was looking at the weather report, do we have any predictions for high wind here?
We don't. Over the next couple of days, they're still predicting red flag, high winds, and inland Orange County, and of course LA and north of there in Ventura County, but it's not impacting Orange County coastal.
Okay.
Yep.
Good report, you guys. Thanks very much for doing that.
I want to echo what you folks are saying. That was an excellent presentation, but also just thank both of you for your leadership of these teams. I can feel how dedicated you guys are to keeping all of us safe, and I thank you for that. Chief King, can you talk a little bit about the priority, if it is a priority, of undergrounding power lines that might not be on roads, right? Like I'm thinking about the fire road between Arch Beach Heights and Top of the World. Would that be a priority? Is it important?
It is important. That's a place where the high winds are going to have an impact, not only for an ignition, but if we had to use the fire roads for egress, emergency egress, and access for emergency equipment.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And Dave, I think this is more a question for you. Can you give us just a quick update on undergrounding of Laguna Canyon Road?
Sure. So we're progressing, have been progressing with the design plan that involves both restructuring and redesign of the road with the utilities placed underneath them. That, of course, requires right now at least a relinquishment of the road by Caltrans. Caltrans does not allow by policy placement of utilities underneath its facilities. So I also think it's something we should take advantage of this opportunity and see if we can get Caltrans to change its mind and say, can you keep the road and put the utilities underneath it? But the most recent activity there, the Public Works team and I met with Caltrans to talk about what they would give us in terms of revenue for state of good repair in advance of the relinquishment effort. So that's proceeding, as well as the design finalization, which will come to you soon, for the recommended design for the road, which includes underground utilities. Thank you. Thanks.
I just want to share, in light of the Chief Calvert's comments, since we're on the topic, I was going to hold this, but there's an article in the LA Times today about the potential causes, and of course they say it'll take months to pinpoint the exact causes, but there were some quotes from Dean Flores, who was, he is currently a member of the California Air Resources Board, and he's a former state senator, and I just thought his comments so encapsulated what I've been saying and others here at the city have been saying for so many years. And here's what he says: the past has taught us that utility equipment is a leading cause of California's deadliest wildfires. This historical pattern cannot be ignored when discussing preventative measures, he said. The real issue here isn't just how these fires might have started, but how preventable they might have been. And then he goes on to talk a little bit about the PUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, has undercut the wildfire prevention strategies by reducing funding for programs to put power transmission lines underground. Yes, undergrounding is expensive, he said, at $3 million to $4 million per mile, but it pales in comparison to the catastrophic costs of wildfires like those devastating Los Angeles County, which can easily exceed $500 billion in damages. He said he believes the CPUC has inadvertently allowed these risks to persist by favoring, quote, lower cost, less effective strategies such as insulated wires and vegetation management while deprioritizing undergrounding. The utilities, Southern California Edison and PG&E, have made some progress in reducing fire risks by undergrounding some of the lines, but he said, but the CPUC's funding cuts have forced utilities to reduce these efforts, and that even SCE's modest plan to put 100 miles underground this year is at risk because the PUC has to approve these undergrounding, the funding for this undergrounding by the utilities. So I couldn't agree more with what the chiefs have said, that we've been here locally talking about this for years now, and hopefully with this tragic event and the two of the three fires now being potentially being investigated for potential utility caused being the cause of the fires. As a community, we just are going to need to really take a serious look at this. It's going to cost money. It's going to be expensive. But if you, as Flores says here, it pales in comparison to the cost of the destruction that could ensue from a fire. And we've had the Emerald Fire, and we had the fire behind the ranch, the Coastal Fire. We had the fire in 2015. We've had lots of warnings. And, we've been fortunate that, through the good efforts of our fire department and, frankly, some lucky breaks with wind, that it hasn't been completely catastrophic here. But sooner or later, one of those is going to come along. So later tonight, I'll be proposing the council consider an agenda item to reactivate the Wildfire Mitigation and Fire Safety Committee that Councilmember Kemp and I started. And as Chief King said, I think we just need to relook at everything. We just need to relook at everything and all the rules and all the assumptions and put everything back on the table. And not all the solutions are going to be, attractive to everybody, right? But we just need to have a no holds barred conversation to figure out what we have to do.
Bob, along those lines, I was reading, and I don't remember what area it was, but when they do the PSPS shutdowns, as they re-energize the lines, they're finding multiple faults. That's another reason to get them underground, because they can't just turn them back. People got really impatient. I got a lot of text messages from people who are out of power. But, if they turn them back on, we're going to have another possibility of a fire. So that's just another data point to highlight why these lines need to be underground.
Yeah, I'll just I wasn't going to give comments now, but since everyone else is, I'll just do the same. I joined the city manager and Chief King to visit our firefighters out there, and I asked a lot of questions. And one of the striking things that for me was very interesting is we talk about undergrounding in the context of preventing wildfires from actually happening, and that's a good reason why we need to underground. And Bob just mentioned the reasons for that. But what was striking is they described fighting two different fires, one of which was in a neighborhood that was not undergrounded, and one was in a neighborhood that was undergrounded. And in the neighborhood where the utility poles were above ground, they had no idea whether or not the lines were energized, which meant that they had to make the assumption that it was energized and that it could explode as they were fighting the fire. So it significantly undermined their ability to fight the fire because they were having to focus on the line. And that's not to mention all the evacuation impacts. So I think we really need to come up with a plan not only for undergrounding Laguna Canyon Road, but streamlining the approval of our assessment district so we can get the whole, I think we're around in the 70% range for our neighborhood assessment district. So if we can get that to 100%, that's something that we have to do. And I totally agree with my colleagues that we need to throw out all the assumptions about what has been and figure out what do we need to do to adjust to the new normal to keep the community safe. And like Bob said, it's not going to all be easy decisions. There's going to be a cost, but I think the cost of inaction is a lot higher than that cost. So anyway, it'll be a future, something that, an ongoing conversation that'll hopefully come back very soon about how we can continue our progress in implementing these critical investments. So thank you again, Chief Calvert, Chief King, and thank you, of course, to our firefighters who are literally risking their lives to protect the people of Los Angeles, but also who are protecting us every day. So thank you.
I want to just
ahead.
take a moment and thank Bob and Sue since 2019, the efforts that they've made with the fire mitigation. We can always do better, and Bob, you answered a question that I was going to ask, just how soon we were going to start this conversation on what we can do better, but I don't want to underscore the progress that we've made since 2019, and I really have to commend you guys for all that progress. Thank you.
Thank you. I totally agree. Okay. Any other questions or comments, or we're good? Okay. Well, thank you both, and